Council meeting this for January 2nd, 2024. My name is Mark Clark. I'm the mayor. I'll call the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Clark.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Spear.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson.
Present.
Councilmember Neal.
Present.
Councilmember Mortensen.
Here.
Councilmember Crabtree.
Here.
Councilmember Delaney.
Present.
All right, next item on the agenda is audience participation. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to address City Council on any item that's not on the agenda or of a public hearing? If so, please step forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none. Any online? All right. Moving on, next item, approval of the agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, Mayor.
All right, entertain motion.
I move to approve the agenda. Second.
I have a motion, a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item, consent agenda. Item number 1, approval of the December 19, 2023 City Council meeting minutes. Item number 2, consideration of ordinance number 811-23, an ordinance implementing elector approval of ballot measure or ballot issue 2B, second reading.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
I have a motion, second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, next item, new business. Item number 3, consideration of ordinance number 813-24 to amend the zoning map of the city of Evans. First reading. We'll hear from staff.
Angela Snyder, Community Development Department.
Michael Hall, planner.
So what we have before you today is a legislative rezoning. Legislative rezoning is different from a quasi-judicial normal rezoning that you hear that's brought to you by an applicant, and there's a set of criteria, and there's a decision made. This legislative rezoning before you was spurred by our update of our zoning code that we recently did. One of the goals of that rezoning was to rezone the Highway 85 corridor so that the zone districts are normal zone districts. So we still have an 85 overlay district. We still have an urban renewal authority over that area. This rezoning does not affect that at all. This only changes what's allowed to be there and puts it into a more traditional zone district classification. So there are 6 changes coming before you today from the 85 overlay. And this is a picture of those changes. So we have the 85A, all of these changes, sorry, I should have said this first. All of these changes were contemplated when we did that ordinance 804-23 last year. But this wraps that up. So we have the black area here is the 85 RCA. That's suggested to go to C4, which is a commercial and industrial mix. Traditionally, this lot has had industrial uses on it in the past, but we also want to be able to consider future commercial use of that property. So that's why C4 is the suggestion for this lot here. The State Farm property is the only 85 RCO property in the city. The recommendation there is to go with C3 just because there's so much other C3 here in the area, and all of the uses that are going on that property, including their accessory warehousing uses, are allowed in C3. Moving down, we have the 85 RCR North, I like to call it, and then we have 85 RCR South down here. On the north side, the suggestion before you today and from the Planning Commission as well is to is to go to a C3 here. There are industrial uses on State Street here behind some of our commercial uses. But previously, that area was zone C3, and it still would allow for the commercial uses here along the highway. And then as we had a recent zone change to industrial here, that option would still be open to an industrial use in that area. They could apply for a rezoning if that was an appropriate location for industrial. Moving our way down here into the 85 RCN zone district, it's the purple outline. That area is also suggested to go to C3. The reasoning behind that is that it was C3 before it went to 85 RCN. So this area is probably the most wrestled with in my mind because there are just so many different uses here. There are, there's a lot of commercial opportunity here. There are homes. So one of the ways that was dealt with when in the ordinance that redid the zoning code was to say that those residences that are in the 85 RCN or that are in this area are grandfathered in. So that way they're not considered even legal non-conforming, which would make it so that if their house halfway burned down, they couldn't rebuild it. They are actually allowed, so that way those residents are protected. Now, if the house goes away entirely, or if they add on to something, it would have to be to a conforming use, like they could add a commercial property on. So it limits their expansion, but it at least allows them to rebuild if necessary. So hopefully C3 with that allowance for the residences was a good solution for the 85 RCN area. And then down here, we have our 85 RCR, and then one piece of 85 RCN. This area is all adjacent to our industrial park. It's all being used, all but one property is being used industrially right now. But again, still want the ability to consider commercial uses on this very visible stretch of land. So the suggestion there is to go to C4 commercial industrial mix in the 85 corridor. We sent notice to all of the property owners in this 85 overlay district, and we had a lot of responses. Surprisingly, all but one of them were very positive. In fact, they were saying, thank you. This has been a hardship to us that our land uses were not legal. They were non-conforming, and it made their insurance difficult or made selling property difficult. Really happy to hear some good reports from here. Even some residents there were happy about the grandfathering in, that at least there was an option for them. Their homes were not, all of a sudden non-conforming. So happy about that. Our one concerned customer, I believe, was under the impression that maybe this would make the industrial uses on the property non-conforming, but I hit something I didn't mean to. Okay. But actually, if he has an industrial use on his property right now, that's actually not allowed at all right now, but in the new code, it would be, if you're going into C4, there are some industrial uses allowed, and so that property would be provided for as well. In talking to these residents, it actually came up to our attention that there are some other locations in town that are just as concerning. And so that was brought before the Planning Commission just to see if it was palatable to consider a legislative rezoning in these areas as well. The first one that came to our attention is that Sam's Club is zoned C1, which is your lowest intensity neighborhood commercial zone district. So that means that technically Sam's Club is legal non-conforming, McDonald's is legal non-conforming, like the car wash across the street is legal non-conforming. Like I don't know of any uses here that are conforming except maybe the new Starbucks. It's not, it would work. but almost all of these uses are not compatible with the C1 zone district. So the suggestion here would be to add in a change to C3 on the Sam's Club and the frontage in front of their property, and then go to a C2 across the street. These properties on this east side of the street just aren't quite large enough to sustain like a C3 where you'd have the huge parking lot. C3 is like big box, regional, commercial. This other side of the street, C2 is just fine. And then by suggesting C2 over here, we're also kind of providing a buffer to these residents as well, that they wouldn't have quite the intensity of what's across the street, but still a great commercial opportunity. Then in talking to the car wash owners there, then it came up that there's property over here on 35th Avenue that also is legal non-conforming. There's a car wash here, the bank, Carpet Place. I think those would fit in C1 barely, but a C2 could be really beneficial for the development of this vacant lot as well. It's all zoned C1 right now, that whole corridor. So this land here around Walgreens and then that Hunter's Reserve development here is all C3. So a C2 would provide a lot of opportunity here. I'm going to be very, very open here that going to C2 on this corner means though that there could be another fuel station here. And quite honestly, if you think about our 29th and 37th intersection, that's your ideal C1 corner. And that has a fuel station in it. It has a little mini grocery store. It has like little restaurants. Like that's what you want neighborhood commercial. So fuel stations can work even in C1, but they right now would require a special use permit in C1. And in C2, they wouldn't. So just saying, a car wash, a fuel station, those kinds of things would be able to go in here if we change it to C2 without city council approval. So here's a list of the commercial uses that we have in these different zone districts, just in case you'd like to consider the difference. We're suggesting several changes to C3 and C4 with a few changes from C1 to C2. I put the industrial uses on here too, just to have something up on the screen in case anyone has any question about about industrial uses as well. I highlighted a few of those things that are different from C1 to C2, such as a car wash or a retail uses outdoor, which is how a fuel station is classified right now. All the bolded items are different between C1 and C2, so those are all things that are easier to do in C2. So we brought these options to Planning Commission in November, and Planning Commission understood the reasoning behind all the changes and actually made no amendment to the recommendation. So happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you.
Any suggestions?
Questions, comments? Councilmember Neal?
The changes on the 85 corridor, were most of those changed when they did that 85 overlay to something different, and then now we're changing it back to what they were in C3?
That's the intention. I will say that some of, like, the property to the south of this building right now had previously been approved. Did I die? I-2. So this is C4. It's not quite what they had before, but it still covers some industrial uses. But that's the intention.
Any other questions, comments?
I do, but
ahead.
I'll go last.
You had mentioned on 35th, so where the ATM station is, but across the street, that little patch there can also be a C2.
Or
So with
yeah.
C2 though, just because that area tends to be more residential, I noticed there's a potential for like funeral home, nightclub, and all that stuff, kind of like across the street. So
Mhm.
I was just kind of reluctant on that, just because if that's, I mean, ultimately there's a criteria. If it matches, then it's a go, right? But it's just a concern of that specific area only
Mhm.
because of the residential that's already going in. And again, that's potential. I mean, we don't know if that's what they'll use it for. But it is
Right.
along 37, so there's a probability that that might be the case. But I just wanted to state that.
It's true. One of the things you have to consider when you're doing a rezoning of any kind is that it's not use specific. I mean, anything that's allowed in that zone district is allowed in that zone district.
Right.
So,
Think about keeping it softer, like keeping it a C2 instead of a C3 versus
Like-
a C1?
No, they're trying to change it from C1 to
You want to
C2.
C2.
Oh, they want to move. Okay.
So C1, you need special use, but if you go to C2, you
But
don't.
I see C3. C3 is the red, right?
mhm.
Right.
And then we're proposing the C1 going into C2.
Mhm. Yes.
Go ahead.
No. Okay, I'll go first.
Go ahead.
So changing any of these non-conforming zones to conforming legal zones, does that have any kind of a financial impact on the businesses there?
From what I've heard from those who've contacted us, some of them were having, I don't know, real or perceived financial trouble under the 85 zoning, because some of those industrial uses, when they go to sell the property, they ask for a zoning verification letter, and it says, "Oh, are the uses that are there right now allowed?" And we have to turn a letter back to them that says no.
Okay, I guess what I really am asking is, since they are legal non-conforming, do they have to come to the city and pay any kind of fees to be legal non-conforming on
Oh,
a
no.
yearly basis or just on application?
Oh, and no, even the application
Okay.
is, we document it, and so that the documentation is even
Okay, and
like
I
a
was just
complimentary, yeah.
seeing if there is any kind of a financial benefit for the businesses. And I know that you have grandfathered in the residents, thank you very much, but also, how about the existing businesses?
Mhm.
I don't,
Yes,
if someone's been running a business there for 20 years and we make the changes to the zoning, I don't want to be giving them a notice that they have to do
Right.
anything different.
no, anyone who's there legally right now is allowed to continue their business in any legal business. Mhm.
Yeah, the zoning change really does allow for most of the previous, or a lot of previously non-conforming uses to be now conforming. So that was the real intent, when the 85 zone district overlay came into play, it was intended to, push development, foster development along the corridor, and by creating these special zone districts. And it really did the opposite. It kind of constricted the allowed uses within those commercial zone districts, if you were looking at it like to like. And so it's now becoming less restrictive and more permissive by aligning with all the other commercial type areas within the city.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I remember when I was on council, when we talked about changing the zoning over to the 85 overlay, we heard just the opposite. It was actually going to help rather than hinder, so I'm glad that you're saying that actually that was hindering more than helping.
It did hinder, correct?
Yeah, because we were all led to believe that was the most beneficial way to develop that corridor going forward. And that's why I think a majority of us at that time agreed to switch that zoning to the 85 corridor overlay. So thanks for letting us know that. I appreciate that.
Certainly.
To me, this pretty much seems straightforward. Anybody else have anything?
So the only question I have is in Ward 1, for the homes that would be grandfathered if they own the property, would that also mean a commercial enterprise could come in and buy the home, demo it, and put up a 7-Eleven?
Certainly.
And then so the only negative side could potentially be upsetting the current neighborhood of residents. Because if we did that, if a commercial outfit came in and leveled 2 homes, they would have the right to build anything they wanted.
There is a right to do that now for certain commercial zone or certain uses within the 85 RCN. There still is a commercial component to that. This just standardizes it and removes the 85 component. So, you know, being in that area constrained by 85 and the railroad there, it's expected to be an area transition over time, but the city is in no way trying to push those folks out. And, you know, if there's viability there, we would honor that.
And that's a valid point because a lot of the owners of those homes are older and are passing away or, thinking about their next stage, so.
And then my last question is back to 35th Avenue, how you want to move from C1 to C2. Why are we not executing a C3 move? Because if the property to the south of 37th is already in C2, why are we not standardizing it and having the potential of putting a big box store on 37th and 35th Ave in the northwest corner?
We did think about that. It might not even be big enough for a big box store. And there are a lot of residences right around there, and that's why we ended up suggesting C2 over C3, but we did think about it because obviously the C3 has been fairly successful on the southeast corner there.
But even on the south side, you already have residents butting right up against that C3. So is there, other than that, why wouldn't we just do it? I don't know. Is there a positive or negative side to it?
Honestly, from my perspective, it was just kind of bridging the gap between C1 and C3 there. C1 is, in my opinion, inappropriate. C1 is for small single kind of parcels within neighborhoods that can support that immediate neighborhood. When you get along a major thoroughfare, a main arterial roadway going through Evans, it warrants reasonably the upzone to a broader commercial zone district that can support the traveling public in more of a regional base without going to the full C3. And again, that was just kind of bridging the gap between the surrounding property owners, recognizing there is the option for true C3 to the south. But again, also, Liberty Draw was a big driving factor just to the southwest here of let's upzone this, let's get some potential. There is going to be a need for, more diverse commercial along that corridor. And it's not just a specific parcel, it's this broader stretch. So it was something that staff wrestled with.
Okay, I fully understand. And I absolutely agree with you that moving from C1 to C2 is appropriate. But you answered the question just now, diversification. So having C2 next to the C3, we're not just throwing it all into the same basket. I appreciate that.
And each
That's well
zone
thought out.
builds on the previous, so all the C1 uses you can typically do in C2. All the C2 you can do in C3. So the list that you're squeezing out by not getting C3, it's probably not going to get you much anyway along that corridor. For reference, that parcel, that entire kind of lower area is about 15 to 20 acres.
So it really sounds like we're going to have more of an economic opportunity, having smaller businesses generating additional tax revenue instead of having one big box in the C3.
That's the goal.
Thank you. That's well thought out.
Anyone else? All right, thank you. Appreciate it. If there's any other additional questions or comments, I would entertain a motion.
I move to adopt ordinance 813-24 to amend the zoning map on first reading.
I second.
A motion is second to adopt ordinance number 813-24 to amend the zoning map on first reading. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Excuse me,
Yes, sir.
sorry to interrupt, but did I sign up properly to speak to that agenda item, or am I speaking out of turn?
So we had the audience participation that was for any item that was not of a public hearing or on the current agenda. It was not a public hearing, but I will give you the opportunity to speak up, say something if you'd like.
If I could,
Sure.
I really appreciate it, and I apologize for
Yeah, no problem.
not following the right procedures. Excuse me. My name is Tom Hamlin. I live at 1995 42nd Street, and I know a few of you up there. I actually worked here for 11 years as the chief building official and was the supervisor for the planner, which is kind of scary sometimes. But I'm very pro-business. And first thing I want to do is tell you guys, I really appreciate what you're doing with this ordinance that you just approved. I think it's fantastic that somebody has finally recognized the snafu that we had all along the Highway 85 corridor. So that's one of my main things. A couple things that I'd like to bring up about it, and this is probably directed more to your planners here. These are some of my thoughts. Believe it or not, I read all 165 pages. So that put me to sleep several times. But anyhow, a couple of things that I'd like these folks to think about and maybe see if there might be an amendment come up somewhere down the line. I don't want to slow this process down because a lot of the businesses along there have fought for years to try to do things with their property, and so it's really great to see this. But one of the things, and I haven't even had a chance to get with these folks, and I apologize for not being at the planning commission because I didn't know what was going on, but that's my fault. I noticed that security residences are allowed in the I-1 or I-2 and I-3 zones, but they're not allowed in any of the other zones, any of the C zones. I personally think if we could look at to see, even if it's a use by special review process, for all of the other C and I, the one remaining I zone, I think it would be a real positive thing because I don't know if Rick Brandt will agree with me, but there's some businesses that are in kind of isolated areas that are going to be in the C zones. That it would really be nice if they could have a security residence. And by that, I mean have an on-site resident there that's employed, has to be employed by the business, but they could kind of keep an eye on things. There's been a lot of incidences where, because it's isolated, things have happened there, and I don't expect the police department to be on every corner every day all the time. I mean, they have to do the rounds and stuff. But I would like you guys, if you would, to maybe consider putting security residence use by special review throughout the other zones. There was a section 18.02020A that made a reference to the term substantial improvements. If there were some substantial improvements to a site and everything, it kicked all this other stuff into gear. I could not find a definition for substantial improvements. And I always think, from my viewpoint previously, it's always good to have a definition for something when you're saying, okay, if you do substantial improvements, well, what's that? What exactly is it? So if that could be looked at as maybe put in a definition for substantial improvements. One question I would like to ask is I noticed that there was areas in the commercial where you could have residential above the commercial. I didn't find a definition for above, and maybe I'm being nitpicky, but there's a lot of things could be above. You could be, as a former building official, you could have a floor that was a foot higher than the other one, and it would be above that. And if it was meant to be strictly above the same footprint, then what was the thinking behind that? And I can get with you guys after this, so we don't drag you guys through all this. But I was just wondering what the thinking was about putting them just above. I've seen it work great. Tottie's, the old Tottie's place where they have all the commercial and the residents up above. It's a great idea, but let's make sure that we're all on the same page. Just a couple more items, you guys, and I'm sorry. I'm assuming that right now, this has no impact whatsoever on the sign code or the, what do I want to say, the landscaping and those types of improvements, the painting of buildings and stuff like that. It has no impact at this time with any of that?
Not this one.
Okay, all right, thank you. Also, and I don't mean to be this way, but I was on council for a couple of years too. I don't know if anybody gets input from the fire department, since it's now its separate entity, and from all your code enforcers, whether it's the police department or your building. I know you subcontract your building inspectors out. You guys ran me off and got somebody else. No, I'm just kidding. But anyhow, I don't know if you get input from them, but I think it's real important because it has some real impact on when they start saying things, this has got to be above here. Well, how does that impact handicap accessibility? There's state laws that you guys have to follow on state laws on what that has to be handicap accessible, you know, things like that. So I'm just making a recommendation there, okay? And other than that, I have heard nothing but positive, you guys, and people still contact me. I've been gone many years. I just was talking here a little while ago. I guess I left my employment here 21 years ago. So I've been gone a long time, but I was on council for a couple of years after that. But I still get contacted by a lot of people, and I appreciate now that when I talk to them, I can say, we've got some people that are starting to look out for you. Please start accepting some of their ideas and stuff, because it's really important that we start building that connection between our business and our city again, because it's been just split up all along the Highway 85 corridor. So with that, I'll shut up, and hopefully I didn't put you guys to sleep.
You're good. Thank you, Tom. And you know, if any of them have any concerns or questions or want to know any information, you know, tell them certainly they're more than welcome to reach out to any of us. We'll be more than happy to sit down with them, you know, or email them or make a phone call or something and discuss with them everything that's going on, address any concerns they might have or anything like that. So please tell them, you know, feel free to reach out to us.
Oh, definitely will. I know a lot of them are gun shy. They really are.
No, tell them to just come on. Don't worry about us. We don't bite. Come talk to us.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, Tom,
again
for your
time.
expertise.
Yes,
All
thanks,
right.
Tom. Appreciate
Take
it.
care, you guys.
Good seeing you. Thank you.
I know did you want to speak on this item or?
I'm new to.
Okay, just real quick.
Well, we do say if it's.
Sure. The procedure here. My name is Marina Collin. I'm a temporary resident. I'm staying with my 83-and-a-half-year-old mother here on State Farm Road. I come to you with the concerns. I actually filed a police report, and I got a copy of the latest and greatest news that's going on here in Evans, which I'm really happy and surprised to see a lot of new development here. I've been gone for about 32 years and moving back to aid with my mom's, just to be here with her. My concern was based before reading what you guys had adopted or approved in regards to the monies that you'll be spending on road improvement and all. If you take a look at State Farm Road entering from 11th Avenue, State Farm Road entering from that avenue. I don't know if you can enter it from any other way.
Sorry to interrupt. Was it on this topic that we were just discussing, or? Was it-
No, but,
So what I'll do
Okay.
is we have another business item.
Okay.
We'll get through that and then I'll reopen up the audience
Okay.
participation and I'll let you finish your comment on that.
okay,
Yes. So
Okay.
if you don't mind, just give us a few more minutes. and
that's okay.
I'll let you
Not a
come back
problem.
up.
I just wanted to be able to.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
on the last item, the legislative rezoning, it looks like that was actually posted as a public hearing and noticed as a public hearing. It's not indicated as that on the agenda.
No, it was not.
And the reason for the confusion is that if you do just a legislative rezoning, then that is a legislative matter and doesn't necessarily have to be a public hearing.
Okay,
If you do an individual rezoning, then that always has to be a public hearing.
Okay.
My recommendation is, since it was posted as a public hearing, that we just recognize that the comments that have been provided will be deemed to be public comments as part of a public hearing. And if you would just ask if there's anyone else that wants to add comments. And then after that, I would recommend that you revote just to confirm that, in light of what you've heard, that your vote is still the same or if it's changed.
okay, sounds good. All right, since this was supposed to be a public hearing, I will ask it if there's anybody else in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item, to please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing on that, and I will entertain a motion, again, for this particular item.
I motion to, vote on ordinance number 813-24, in first reading.
I second.
A motion, a second, to adopt the ordinance number 813-24 for amending the zoning map on the first reading. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. All right. Next item, item number 4, consideration of public works equipment purchase, and we will hear from staff.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this item is coming to you as a kind of a centerpiece of sorts to the 2024 budget. During the budget formulation process, Council did approve a number of one-time large equipment purchases, of which we've been able to start back in October. This year we purchased 2 of the tandem axle dump trucks and then the 938 front end loader. What we have before you tonight are a number of other equipment purchases that were identified. We have an additional tandem axle dump truck. This is also a Freightliner 108 SD, similar to the other 2 that we've already purchased. And then we have a single axle dump truck. Both the dump trucks come with a snow plow and a drop spreader for better winter operations. Both of the dump trucks we're proposing tonight are the Freightliner 108 SDs. And then we have a skid steer, a Cat skid steer on here for your consideration, and then 2 Ventrac mowers. Now, I do want to point out, I did send out an email earlier today. We did get an updated quote. The information contained within the council packet does include Ventrac mower. However, it is for a single wheel. And so the quote that we sent back out to you guys today for your consideration is a dual wheel. I like the dual wheel a little bit better. I think it makes more sense. It spreads out the weight of the equipment, provides better stability, but it also increases the plane, the inclined plane in which this piece of equipment can be used, from a 20-degree plane to a 30-degree plane, which, as our stormwater team is using this, I think that could be very advantageous to us. That piece of equipment does cost an additional $3,762.80. So the total cost for the Ventrac would be $136,021.44. That we planned for $119,000 in the budget. However, that was based off August of 2023 numbers. Because the numbers for the 2 dump trucks, the tandem axle and the single axle, came in more favorably, we do have sufficient funds to purchase those 2 dual wheel Ventrac mowers. So if the council is agreeable, the motion would need to be amended from $810,596.64 to $814,359.44. Again, if the council is interested in making that motion in the affirmative. And Mr. Mayor, with that, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it back over to council for consideration.
Do you have anything to add since you're up here?
All sounds great to me.
All right. Any questions or comments for staff?
So all of the equipment, brand new, the latest models?
That is correct.
Okay, we're not doing 2-year-old models or, okay. And just to be sure too, on the skid steer, it's a Trek skid steer?
That is correct.
Okay.
To me, the additional $3,700 for a better product, I mean, to me, makes a lot of sense, so.
I agree.
Any other, oh, sorry, Councilmember Neal, go ahead.
I have a question. Are we getting, any, new attachments that we haven't previously got? It looks like at least three of them
His thing's up.
we've already purchased.
Right, there are a few new attachments. You're talking for the VinTrack, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, there are a few new attachments. So these are for a different department. The previous VinTracks that we purchased were for the Parks Department. These are going to be for the Operations Department, so street, stormwater, water distribution. These ones we're hoping to get a boom mower, so that's going to be able to do our along the edges of the ditch, sidewalk pathways and stuff like that. Just has a nice reach to be able to get down in some hard to reach spots with an actual mower. We also have included 2 of the Tough Cut decks. Those are mower decks that are going to be used for native and retention pond areas as well. They're for anything up to, I believe it was 3/4 of an inch size, so it can cut down small trees, you know, that are just starting to grow. We also have 2 plow blades on there, so that way we'll be able to run sidewalks with these machines and be able to get that done quicker and more efficiently. And then the last attachment is a broom attachment. That's another thing that's going to be good for cleaning off sidewalks, gutters, stuff like that. If that's something that they end up needing to use it for. It's also good for light snow. It can help brush that off of the sidewalk without damaging anything.
And Cameron, if I recall, these 2 tractors will have the cab.
That's correct. Yeah, that's another difference between the parks and the operations VinTracks. These ones will have cabs on them with heaters, so they will be able to do the plowing of the sidewalks and still be safe for the operators.
Nice.
Very nice. Any other additional questions, comments?
I do have one question. Was this, I didn't see it in the packet, was this bid out or are these just quotes that we went to one vendor on?
These are through BidNet. The pricing is through BidNet. It's a particular vendor that we've used in the past, so we still have the governmental pricing on it. So we're still getting the best price on these particular machines.
And there's a couple of them that went through Sourcewell's.
That's correct. So yeah, the VinTrack specifically, I believe, were through. Let me make sure here so I don't.
Well, he's pulling that up. Thank you for asking.
Sourcewell, correct. Yes, the VinTracks were through Sourcewell. So same as BidNet, it's a governmental pricing agency. So we'll be getting the best price on those.
Yeah, so Sourcewell means it's been bid competitively already, and they have won the Sourcewell contract, so you know that with that Sourcewell contract, you're getting the best price for that piece of equipment.
Thank you.
Any other additional questions, comments? If not, I would entertain a motion. Quiet on the front.
I move to approve the purchase of a tandem axle dump truck, single axle dump truck, a Caterpillar 255 skid steer, and 2 VinTrack 4520N tractors in the amount of $810,000. Sorry.
814, 359,
$814,353.59.
dollars and
Nice writing. And 44 cents.
Second.
I have a motion to approve the purchase of a tandem axle dump truck, single axle dump truck, Caterpillar 255 skid steer, 2 VinTrack 4520N tractors in the amount of $814,359.44. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Your Honor, I think you need a second on that.
Oh, I thought.
Fred did.
Fred did.
Fred seconded.
I seconded.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You could read your writing better.
All right, I will open up audience participation for anybody that wants to address any item that's not on the agenda or of a public hearing. Please step forward, ma'am. Can you restate your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, Marina Cullen, 2940 State Farm Road, here in Evans. So, as I was mentioning, I am concerned with just the safety. Evans PD would know that there's a lot of activity in that area, but more importantly, I'm concerned with the speeding that goes in that area. It's going on in that area. I would like, and I don't know the procedure in which I would go about this. I know that I did read that there was some monies that were approved for, improvement of roads and all. And I would like to see a speed bump go on on State Farm Road where it makes that turn. And then when you're coming out to go towards 11th Avenue, there's a stop sign, which often is, California stop is what people call it. And then these cars coming from, I don't know what that would make this street here. I know that my mom lives on State Farm Road. So they're coming this way, and I feel like it's just an accident waiting to happen. And over the years that I've visited my mom, and now recently that I have stayed with her on and off over the past 3 years, transitioning over to Colorado, and because I am who I am, I'll be out in the street if I'm going out to check her mail or something, and I'm like going like this, and I have to pretend I'm not walking back to her apartment because I don't know who I'm dealing with. But so the two things I would like to know, and if someone can get back to me at a later time as far as the steps that I should take to see if I could have someone consider some improvements on those streets there. And also if there's a way, I don't know if I would go directly to the police department or if there's a form of communication in which there could be more patrol in that area for that purpose, rather than just waiting for a crime to happen in that area. So,
Yeah, so thanks first of all for being here and letting us know of your concern.
Oh, I love this stuff.
We could get you in touch with one of our staff members, Curtis or somebody. If you want to talk with Curtis, he can get down the information and we can get you everything you need. And also our police chief is here. I'm sure he heard it, and I'm sure they'll look into possibly doing something that they can in that area. But we are definitely trying to address the many complaints that we do receive for traffic violations and traffic complaints. It's not just here in Evans, but it's happening.
Oh, I know.
So
It's
we feel your pain. We're trying to mitigate it and to do the best we can. But thanks for bringing it.
Okay, and I just want to state, because my mother does park in her garage, and it could just happen that quickly. And then not just my mom, but you're seeing more people living in units, so that's more people driving in that area. And I mean, over the years, I've just seen that increase. So I have an overall concern for the residents in that area, primarily for my 83-year-old mother, who gladly just still drives and drives really well. But when she's driving out, I mean, she's going to be careful. There's a dip, boom. And so I just want to be safe. But okay, I will meet up with Curtis. Thank you much.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, next item, we'll move on to reports. City manager.
Yes, Mayor and Council, in your email this afternoon, you should have received an email from me. I received a letter from the developers at Flexible Evans. I received that via our ERA attorney, Corey Hoffman. If you could please review that at your earliest convenience. And then my ask out of that letter is I would like to have an ERA meeting as soon as possible so you can give me directions on how to best handle that. My recommendation would be for a special ERA meeting this Thursday, January 4th at 6:00 p.m. if that works for the governing body. My plan with that is to have Corey Hoffman, our ERA attorney, virtually attend that meeting so he can help guide the conversation, answer any questions you may have. Certainly myself, Scott, and Drew will be in attendance as well to help guide that conversation. So if that works for the governing body, this Thursday, January 4th at 6 p.m. is what I'm proposing.
I thought I had a conflict with that, but when I checked my calendar, when it was proposed, my MPO meeting is not until the following Thursday. I'm good with that. Anybody else on council have an issue, or can they make it?
I have a conflict with that. I can't make that.
Can't.
What's the date again?
This Thursday, the 4th, at 6.
At 6 p.m.
I'm available.
Available?
I'm available.
I'm available. I can be available.
Red?
We'll make it slave driver.
All right. We can just fill you in. Is it gonna be an executive?
Yes, yeah, it'll be an executive session.
Maybe, he can just back brief you, and you, if you want, just to provide some input to him.
Okay.
On it.
That'd be
Okay,
fine.
6 o'clock?
Okay,
All right.
we will make,
And do you
we'll
need
post
an
notice
email
tomorrow.
from me regarding?
I
Okay.
you to request that.
Okay, I will send you an email, this evening regarding that special meeting. Okay.
Here.
That's all I've got.
All right, great, thank you. City Attorney?
The only thing that I wanted to mention is you should have received a memo from me on the hate speech issue that some municipalities have been experiencing. I figured if I send a memo, then Evans will never have the problem. So I sent the memo and hopefully you won't. But if you have any questions about it, please feel free to give me a call. There are some First Amendment issues that are related to it. And that's all I've got.
Great, thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is, we got council discussion.
Can I just?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just want to kind of, with the same topic I was mentioned earlier, on 29th, and this is kind of, your 29th Avenue. On New Year's Day, there was a situation where a vehicle hit a property, went through their backyard, and literally ran through the backyard of 3 properties and exited out. So a huge concern with that road, right? We did put those cement bollards on one property because of the constant, crashes inside the property over the year. And now with the Hope Springs property coming in and the stop sign, that has mitigated that area. But unfortunately, now that there's a stop, it's kind of like from that stop, they stop and it's like a straightaway. So we're having issues there with that. So I just wanted to bring that up as a discussion. I'm not stating a work session as of now, but maybe if we can find, just because not just that area, but all, many areas are having a lot of issues on how we can, think of ways to mitigate that problem somehow.
Why did we not do a roundabout?
Right, I know, that would have been great.
Well, I mean, I would agree with you. If we can look at some kind of mitigation service, items for that area and not necessarily have a council discussion, maybe something staff can look into as far as maybe doing the same thing we did with the front end part of it, and which is in his discretion spending, because they were what, $8,000, something like that for that approximately. Yeah, I mean, if that's something,
For the what, I'm sorry?
it was like 8,000 for the.
The bollards,
Oh,
it
okay,
was,
8,000,
yeah,
yes.
it was,
So one of the things that was brought up, and I just wanted, again, this is like a proposal just from the, residents there, is on Anchor, I believe it is, the road. So it's kind of a ways from now that stop sign, having like a stop sign, a 4-way stop sign there. And that will also help with when cars are traveling west, because there's like a blind spot there and they tend to move forward. But I don't think it lines up, if I'm correct. I don't know. But anyway, just finding ways. I just wanted to bring it up just because, the residents in that area are really scared, just because it came close to children's bedrooms. And so now they're afraid of having their children play outside because of those situations that have been happening more often than not. And it's just a reoccurring issue on that street, that it's just properties are just being crashed into.
It's
And
just reoccurring everywhere.
Everywhere. They just
Yeah.
they went through the park. That's been the second time that they've gone through that particular place onto my property. And then it's happened 3 or 4 times on the north end. And just on Monday, they went through and took out the brand new city fence
oh wow.
over on Pueblo, where we just approved.
Yep.
There's a beautiful brand new wooden fence that was beautifully put in
Did we take a picture before it happened?
I
almost did.
and anyways, they just took that out for drifting, and so, I mean, I think that we do have to figure out somehow. I
Big
know,
rocks.
Mayor, I know, that's what I was just saying too, bigger rocks, but I mean, how, we need to have speed bumps everywhere apparently, ballasts everywhere, big rocks everywhere. They did tear up the car actually on both
They
of the
did, yeah.
occasions. But, you know, I think it's like Mayor, Clark said, it's happening everywhere. And I don't know what we can do, and maybe we need a discussion of what we can do as a city
But
to help mitigate some of it in places that it habitually happens. Because in these other two places, it's happened 2 times in one place and 5 times in the other place, so we know that's a habit, and.
But even on like Crescent Cove Drive, which is a private drive, we have speed bumps all throughout. Those people tear through that property, not just my residents, guests do it too. Today, my guy looked out the window while I was doing some money and he goes, "What's that guy doing? Going like 75, 100? And they don't care. I'll go outside and be like, "Slow down." It doesn't change.
Well,
Like
that
a
kind of-
roundabout.
Yeah, well, that kind of leads me into what I was gonna say, so you should have all received an email from me regarding a possible council retreat. Definitely something that we can address and see if we can't tackle to mitigate that. I know a lot of it's going to probably be getting our police staffing up to where it needs to be, up to par. A lot of that's also gonna be getting that at least a dedicated, if not 2 traffic units out there to kind of just get out there and do that. And also it's gonna, take a little bit more of this to continue to maybe where, at least at the state level, they'll wake up and say, hey, maybe we need to start enforcing some of these traffic laws and not just, it's okay. Because people, when they know that there's not any consequence to their action, they're just gonna continue to do it. But I would say let's have a good discussion about that on our council retreat. If you guys can let me know by, I would say sometime next week what your preference is, whether it's the 27th or an off Tuesday. That way I can let staff know and we can start coordinating on that. I would appreciate
I already
And
gave
then
you an answer.
Can we request also, since we're on that
Yeah,
topic,
what do you got?
if we can get like, incident reports, just so we can have a conversation about the frequency of those areas, just to have an idea.
I just
Yeah.
emailed Cody. asking for-
Okay.
Okay, so when you
Sounds
get
good.
it, can you
Okay.
send it to everyone?
Well, I'm saying for us, if we have a retreat, could they get us the reports?
Perfect.
Especially where there are multiple accidents.
So I know real quick, I know if you responded for the 27th, Fred said I was a slave driver, but he didn't tell me his date of preference. Does 27th work?
It'll work.
It works for you?
I'll
Yep, the
cancel my
27th.
vacation.
That's great.
This is 27th.
Saturday the 27th?
Honestly, I didn't get an email.
You didn't get it? Oh, I
No.
sent it to all the council. I guess maybe they haven't updated. I apologize.
Got you. No, that's fine.
No.
So I'm pretty sure the 27th
Saturday the
works.
27th?
I just gotta verify. I'll email you tonight.
Okay, sounds good. All right.
Mark,
All
I
right.
have a question. Is the 4th, do we have enough time to legally post that meeting? This special
Well,
council?
that's why I'm gonna send her an email with that, so it gets posted with enough notice. Also, lastly, tomorrow, expect an email from me with the committee assignments. Also, if you can get back to me by the 12th with what your preferences are, that way I can, at our council meeting on the 16th, I can let everybody know. Mayor Pro Tem and I can sit down and assign everybody and let everybody know what their preferences are and get those assigned.
You may have emailed it, but what is the time for the retreat?
I'm looking at 9
It's an
a.m.,
email. Okay.
9 a.m. to 12 at the latest
Okay.
on the 27th.
Just writing it down,
Yes.
just 'cause that's my.
Okay. That's all I have. Anybody else have anything? All right, sounds good. All right, we'll move on to executive session. I'd entertain a motion.
Be at Riverside?
What's that?
The council retreats at Riverside?
I will get with staff to kind of figure out
So
that now that I
locations
have
and-
everybody's preference. I'll get with staff and see if it's either at Riverside or maybe we can hold it at, one of those other locations that they have, graciously offered for us to do like a retreat there or something. So we'll get that out.
I move to go into executive session to discuss the possible acquisition of an interest